You are naked. It is -20 degrees. And something in the dark just moved. That is where the story starts. 3 million years ago, your ancestors had no clothes, no fur, no wool, no animal skin, just skin, bare, exposed, completely vulnerable, to cold, to heat, to everything, and they survived anyway, because they had no choice. But something changed, something that scientists spent decades arguing about, something so simple it seems almost embarrassing. Someone picked up a dead animal and wrapped it around themselves, and in that single moment, something that had never existed before was born: clothing. But here is the question nobody asks. Why then? Why did it take so long? Humans existed for millions of years before clothes, walking around completely exposed, in some of the harshest environments on Earth. The answer will genuinely surprise you. First, let us understand what your ancestors were actually dealing with. Early humans evolved in Africa. Hot, dry, open savanna. The human body was perfectly designed for that environment. No fur needed. Sweat instead of fur. The ability to cool down while running, that no other animal had. A lion overheats after sprinting for 30 seconds. Your ancestor could run for hours. Not fast, but relentless. Forever. In the African heat. Bare skin was not a weakness in that environment. It was a superpower. But then something happened. Something that changed everything. Your ancestors started moving. Out of Africa. Into new landscapes. New temperatures. New environments that the human body was never designed for. And the further they moved, the colder it got. Europe. Asia. Siberia. Temperatures that would kill an unprotected human. In hours. Sometimes minutes. Your ancestors walked into a world that was actively trying to freeze them to death, with nothing but bare skin, and they needed a solution, fast. The solution was already lying on the ground in front of them. Every animal your ancestors hunted came wrapped in something extraordinary, thick, warm, perfectly insulating, a biological system that had been refined over millions of years of evolution to keep an animal alive in exactly the cold. Your ancestors were now facing animal skin, animal fur, the first human who wrapped a fresh kill around their shoulders and felt the warmth hit them. That moment changed our species forever. Not because it was clever, because it was obvious. The solution was always there. They just had to be cold enough to try it. But here is where it gets fascinating. Wearing a raw animal skin is not as simple as it sounds. Fresh skin rots. Within days it becomes stiff, smelly, unusable, crawling with bacteria, falling apart in your hands. So your ancestors had to figure out how to process animal skin into something that would last. And this is where the story gets genuinely incredible. Scientists have found evidence of hide scraping tools, dating back at least 400,000 years. Stone tools specifically shaped to scrape the fat and flesh off the inside of an animal skin, making it thin, flexible, preserved. 400,000 years ago, your ancestors were not just wearing animal skins. They were processing them, treating them, turning raw material into something functional. That is not survival instinct. That is technology. The first fashion industry, operating 400,000 years before anyone had a word for it. But when did it actually start? This is the question scientists fought over for decades. Because clothing does not fossilize. Fabric, leather, fur, all of it disappears completely over thousands of years, leaving no trace, no evidence, just absence. So how do you find the origin of something that leaves nothing behind? You find the needle, not the clothing, the needle. In 2016, scientists discovered bone needles in a cave in Siberia, dating back 50,000 years. Tiny, precise, perfectly formed, with a hole at one end for thread. A needle means thread. Thread means sewn clothing. Sewn clothing means your ancestors were not just draping skins over themselves. They were constructing garments. Fitted, layered, designed. 50,000 years ago, your ancestors were making clothes with the same basic technology a tailor uses today. But scientists found an even stranger way to date the origin of clothing. Lice, specifically body lice, which are different from head lice. In one very specific way, body lice live in clothing, not on the body, on the clothing, which means body lice could not have existed before clothing existed. Scientists analyzed the DNA of body lice and traced back exactly when they diverged from head lice. The moment body lice became a separate species is the moment clothing was invented. The answer? Approximately 170,000 years ago. 170,000 years ago, your ancestors were wearing enough clothing to give body lice a permanent home. You can track the entire history of human clothing through the evolution of a parasite living in your shirt. But clothing was never just about warmth. This is the part that changes everything. From the very beginning, clothing was about something more. Scientists studying the earliest sewn garments found something unexpected. Decorations, beads, shells, ochre staining, patterns deliberately added to clothing that had no functional purpose whatsoever. Your ancestors were not just covering themselves. They were expressing something, communicating something about who they were, which group they belonged to, what their status was, what they believed. The moment humans started wearing clothes, they started using clothes to tell stories about themselves, to each other. That instinct has never left us. Right now, the clothes you are wearing are telling a story about you to every person who looks at you, the same way a cave dweller's decorated animal skin told a story 170,000 years ago. Nothing has changed, only the materials. And here is the final thing. Clothing did not just protect your ancestors from the cold. It allowed them to go places no human had ever gone before. Without clothing, humans are an African animal, perfectly designed for heat and sun, unable to survive anywhere else. With clothing, humans became something entirely different, a species that could survive anywhere, every climate, every environment, every corner of the planet. Clothing did not just keep your ancestors warm. It gave them the entire world, every mountain range ever crossed, every frozen tundra ever survived, every new continent ever reached. None of it happens without the moment someone picked up a dead animal and wrapped it around their shoulders. In the dark, you are not just wearing clothes right now. You are wearing the reason your species owns the planet.